Hey there, Drowsy Historian here. Tonight, we're going somewhere that punishes not with force, but with form. Victorian England. A place of starched collars and tighter morals, where a young girl's greatest mistake is not sin, but visibility. You are poor, unmarried, and pregnant. And from the moment someone notices, the rest unfolds without your consent. You will not be punished loudly. You will be corrected quietly. Before we begin this slow descent into vinegar baths, silent meals, and institutional kindness, do me one small favour. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is there. If you'd prefer these stories without ads, you can join the Patreon. It's linked in the description. And if you're listening in bed, consider using sleep mask headphones. They're soft, they block the light, and they provide the ultimate immersive experience. I've linked the ones I use in the description. Now, lie back, get comfortable, let's begin. You wake before the bell, as always. It's still dark outside the narrow window, and the glass has frosted over again, despite the fire having burned low just hours ago. The mattress beneath you is thin and still damp near the edges from the cold. Your joints creak with the ache of a body that never fully rests, and your fingers, when you stretch them, sting with yesterday's scrubbing. The other maids around you are breathing shallowly beneath coarse blankets, curled in their separate corners of the attic like discarded laundry. You don't bother to light the lamp. You know the room well enough in shadow. You reach for your shift and stop. The rag you tucked into the waistband yesterday, just in case, is still dry. The spot on the mattress you expected to hide this morning, clean. A pause settles over you, slow and wide. You've been late before by a day or two. Never by this much. You don't gasp, you don't cry. You simply sit there, spine stiff, waiting to feel something more certain than dread. Downstairs, the scullery door bangs in the wind, and the dogs begin their usual racket. It's a sound you've heard every morning since you took this post, and yet today it rings differently. Too loud, too exposed. You pull on your uniform and lace your boots with stiff fingers. They'll be calling for hot water soon. You cannot be late. The cook is not gentle, and the mistress will be inspecting the linen cupboard again. You remind yourself that it could still be nothing. A long month, a cold month, a tired body. In the servants' hall, you set the kettle over the coals and knead your knuckles as you wait. Your stomach twists, not from hunger, but from something more sour. The way the floor tilts under you slightly, as though the room knows what you failed to admit. You slice bread, sweep ashes, and carry the bucket upstairs to the mistress's washstand. She doesn't look at you, of course. She never does unless there's a reason. You keep your head down and say nothing. You always say nothing. You've been trained well. By midday, your back is soaked through from starching collars, and the fire in the laundry room makes the air thick and hard to breathe. You wipe your forehead with a sleeve and feel the heat in your cheeks. You hope it's just from the steam. You push through it. You always do. But there's something slower in your limbs today, a heaviness that isn't work or fatigue. You move like someone being watched, even when no one is around. At the sink, your hands shake as you wring out the linens. You tell yourself it's the chill in the water. The girl beside you says nothing, just like you. You don't have friends here. No one does. It isn't that kind of place. The older maids keep to themselves. The younger ones keep their heads down. One made the mistake of speaking too freely last winter. She was gone before the first thaw. No letter, no explanation. Just a new face by the stove and a room that needed scrubbing. You don't eat much at supper. The stew smells of old onions and something slightly off. You force it down anyway. It sits wrong. When you return to the attic, your fingers are raw from lye, and the hem of your petticoat is still damp from where you knelt by the wash basin. You lie back without undressing fully. There's no warmth to be had anyway. Beneath the thin blanket, your hand moves to your belly. You don't press. You're not ready for confirmation. You just rest it there, waiting. The next morning, the shift is still clean. and the one after that. You try to keep track, but the days have begun to blur, a carousel of scrubbing, stitching, silence, and meals eaten in the corner. You speak only when spoken to. You've always been like that, even before this place, even before you were sent away, even before the parlour maid with the soft hair said he liked your face. He doesn't work here anymore. He left suddenly. They said he got another post, better wages. You remember the way he looked through you, not at you. You remember the way your hand shook when you folded his shirts. You remember the way you didn't say no, not because you said yes, but because there was no one to say it to. Your chest feels tight. You carry coal until your arms ache. You bleed from scrubbing the stone steps with vinegar. You try to make your body feel anything else, but it doesn't. It simply goes on, traitorous and dumb. You can't pretend anymore. You're late. It's real. It's happening. Still, you don't speak. The cook begins to look at you differently. Not overtly. She doesn't have the time. But her eyes narrow when you ask for more soap. She sighs more heavily when you miss a spot on the silver. And one morning, she tells you your apron is filthy before you've even started. The other girls won't meet your gaze. The laundry girl, the one with the burn scar on her wrist, starts folding towels at the far table. You feel their absence more than their presence. No one asks. They don't have to. When you pass through the kitchen on your way to the linen cupboard, the smell of lard hits you, thick, greasy, and clinging to the air like smoke. It's coming from the stove, where the cook is frying rashers for the master's breakfast. It floods your nose before you can turn your head. The nausea comes fast. You freeze for a second, hand still on the door frame, then stagger to the scullery sink and retch. It's quick, sharp, full of bile. Your throat burns and your eyes water. The sound is muffled by the hiss of fat and the rattle of pans. No one says anything, but you know the boy at the table saw. You wipe your mouth with your sleeve and stand up slowly. You tell yourself it's just the grease. It always smells like that in the mornings. But you know. You knew the moment your shift came up clean. You knew before the girls stopped meeting your eyes. You knew before the ache in your back settled into something slower, deeper, harder to name. It's from your time with that man a while back. He had kind eyes when he wanted something. That was the trouble. You folded shirts while he flirted. He said your hands were small, that you looked like someone who listened. You remember the way he smiled like it was harmless, as if it didn't count because you were both in service, both just passing time in the same narrow corridors. He left a week before you missed your courses, said he got a better post, said nothing else. He's gone now, and you're not sure he ever meant to stay. You wash your face and return to the hall before the bell. No one says a word. You try to keep working. You pin your apron higher than usual and keep your shoulders back to make your waist look slimmer. You take smaller portions at breakfast so the kitchen maid won't ask why you're queasy. You lift what you shouldn't lift and bend when you shouldn't bend, and when the ache sets in across your lower back, you tell yourself it's the starching, or the floorboards, or the weight of the mop bucket. You keep your head down. You answer only when addressed. You scrub the same step twice to be safe. The work is a kind of camouflage. It always has been. The other girls don't say anything, not directly, but they've begun to drift. The one who used to share the flat iron with you now does her pressing on the other side of the table. The younger scullery maid avoids your eyes when you pass her the kettle. One afternoon in the laundry room, the door closes before you reach it. No voices behind it, just the latch clicking shut. You don't try again. That night, you sleep with your arms crossed over your stomach, as though the pressure might make you invisible again. The cook no longer asks for your help kneading the dough. She says you're clumsy with your hands. The housekeeper looks over your head when she gives out assignments and doesn't say your name. You aren't scolded, you aren't confronted, you're simply set aside. No one wants to be seen speaking with you in the hall. No one wants to be accused of knowing. You keep waiting for someone to say it. You expect the mistress to call you in with her tight-lipped questions and her stiff-backed chair, or the butler to ask whether you've been indiscreet. But the confrontation never comes. Instead, there is only the quiet, the kind that settles over a hallway just before inspection, the kind that wraps around you like starch on wet linen. The silence is worse than shouting. Shouting would mean you still belonged. One morning the housekeeper informs you, without raising her eyes from her ledger, that your work has fallen off. She says the master has noticed the quality of the silver. She says the mistress is displeased with the state of her cuffs. There is no accusation in her voice, only administrative inconvenience. You're told your services are no longer required. You will be paid at the end of the week. No reference will be given. You nod once. You keep your hands folded. There is nothing to say. Nothing they haven't already said without speaking. You pack your things before the supper bell. There's not much. 2 shifts, a hairbrush, the worn rosary from your mother's drawer. No one helps. No one watches. The girl in the cot beside yours is already asleep when you carry your bundle downstairs. You suspect she isn't sleeping. The butler leaves your final wages on the table in a sealed envelope. He doesn't hand it to you. You stand there for a moment, unsure whether to speak. He clears his throat, and you pick up the envelope and go. The door shuts softly behind you, and the cold air presses in like judgment. You walk. You don't go home immediately. You take the long way through the narrow lanes, where the cobbles are slick with soot and horse droppings, and the fog hangs low over the chimneys. The air smells of coal and boiled cabbage. You pass a group of boys with caps pulled low and faces like winter, sharp and expressionless. One of them looks at your belly. Not long, just a flick of the eyes. You pull your coat tighter. Your boots are wet. Your fingers ache from gripping the handle of your satchel. You keep walking. By the time you reach the alley near your mother's street, your feet are numb and your breath is short. You knock softly, once, then again. The door opens halfway. Your mother stands behind it with a dishcloth still in her hands. She looks at your face, then at the bundle under your arm. She doesn't invite you in. She asks if you've been dismissed. You nod. She asks if you were caught stealing, and you shake your head. Then her eyes drop, just for a moment, to the way your coat stretches slightly across your middle. Her mouth tightens. She doesn't ask anything else. A chair scrapes inside. Your father's voice comes from the next room, low and flat. She can't stay. Your mother doesn't look at you again. The door closes, not slammed, just firmly, with the kind of finality that doesn't require explanation. You don't try to change their minds. There's no point. You sleep in the hay shed behind the blacksmith's for 2 nights. The roof leaks and the straw is damp, but it's quieter than the streets. On the 3rd morning, a woman finds you on your way to nowhere in particular. She's tidy and middle-aged, with a clipboard tucked under her arm and the clipped smile of someone who doesn't need to ask your name. She doesn't scold, she doesn't threaten. She simply walks beside you and says she's from the parish. Her tone is gentle in the way of someone who expects compliance. She says there are places for girls like you. Clean places, safe places, Christian places. She offers you a pamphlet printed on stiff paper, with block letters and ink that's bled slightly in the damp. The haven for fallen women. A house of moral reformation. Motherly guidance, firm principles, private instruction. The phrase catches in your mind, fallen women. You turn the paper over and read it again. It doesn't describe what happened. It doesn't ask what you need. It only names what you are, not in question, in conclusion. You nod not because you agree, but because it's what's expected. She hands you another coat, one with fewer holes, and a hard biscuit wrapped in waxed paper. Then she asks if your parents are aware of your circumstances. You don't answer. She doesn't press. It isn't the first time she's asked without needing the answer. You look down at the pamphlet in your hand. Your name isn't written on it, but it might as well be. You're no longer a girl. You're no longer a maid. You're no longer someone's daughter. You're a case, a subject, a quiet inconvenience to be managed with starch and scripture. The woman walks you toward the tram stop. You don't ask where the home is. It doesn't matter. You fold the pamphlet into your coat pocket. It crackles like dried leaves. You and the woman ride the tram for a short while before arriving. The building is grey, not the kind of grey that comes from soot or fog, but the kind that feels deliberate, cold, flat and absorbent. Nothing reflects off its surface. It sits at the edge of the street, like a scab the city has chosen not to heal. The windows are narrow and high, most of them barred, and the front steps are worn from decades of quiet arrivals. You stand on the threshold with your parcel of clothes tucked under one arm and your coat stiff from damp. The woman from the parish doesn't knock. She reaches for the bell and pulls. It doesn't chime, it groans, low, mechanical, as though even the building resents being disturbed. The door opens after a minute. A woman in a grey uniform looks you over, not with interest or sympathy, but with the sort of attention one gives to vegetables at market. Checking for bruises, not stories. She doesn't greet you. She nods once to the parish worker, then steps aside. You cross the threshold. The door shuts behind you with the sound of something decided. Inside, the air is close. The hallway is tiled halfway up in faded green, the kind that was once called sanitary, but now just looks ill. The smell is sharp. Vinegar, carbolic soap, starch, and something fainter underneath, like boiled wool and old milk. The woman who let you in says nothing. She gestures for you to hand over your coat and bundle. They vanish into a wicker basket behind the desk, without record or farewell. You do not know if you will see them again. You are led down a long hallway. The floor is stone scrubbed unevenly. Your boots echo with every step, but the woman ahead of you walks soundlessly in soft-soled shoes. You pass closed doors, each identical. Plain wood, black hinges, a tarnished brass number near the top. Some are ajar. You catch brief glimpses, girls folding linen, kneeling with buckets, sitting in rows, stitching buttons onto shirts they will never wear. They are all in grey, none of them speak, most don't look up. Those who do glance at you the way someone might look at a broken clock, curiosity dulled by expectation. You are not the first, you are not the last. You are brought to a small office where another woman sits behind a desk. She is older, with a thin face and a mouth that seems perpetually prepared to scold. She doesn't introduce herself. She points to a chair. You sit. She slides a form across the surface. The pen beside it is cracked at the nib. She tells you to sign your name, not in a request, just a flat instruction. You hesitate. It's been months since you've written anything. The last time was to mark your initials on a basket of linen at your old post. You grip the pen and scratch your name across the paper. She draws a line through it with a blunt pencil. One smooth stroke. You watch the name vanish. She moves on. The rules come next. There are many. You will rise at 5. You will kneel for prayer before your feet touch the ground. You will scrub, sew, launder, iron, fold, mend and polish. You will eat what is given, when it is given, and speak only when permitted. You will not question the routine. You will not question the staff. You will not speak of your condition unless asked directly. Your letters, should you wish to send any, will be reviewed. If you're found to be idle, disrespectful, disobedient, or immoral in speech or conduct, your stay will be extended. If you run, you will not be welcomed back. If you repent, you may be saved. She does not ask if you have any questions. She does not ask if you understand. She waits only long enough to see you nod. Then she calls someone else in. You're taken to the bathing room. It is a long, tiled space that smells like vinegar and soap. The floor slopes slightly toward a central drain. Along the far wall are several tin tubs, each filled with tepid water and a thin film of floating scum. Another girl, already undressed, sits in one with her knees drawn to her chest. Her head is bowed. Her hair clings to her collarbones in wet strands. She does not look up. You are told to undress. The voice is flat, businesslike. You fumble with the buttons on your dress. Your hands feel thick, unfamiliar. When you finally step out of your clothes, your skin goose pimples in the cold. You fold the garments by habit. No one thanks you. The woman beside you scoops them into a sack without comment. You are brought to a stool. The scissors appear without ceremony. The girl who carries them is young, maybe 15, with sallow skin and bitten nails. She does not speak as she begins to cut. The blades are dull. They catch and pull. Chunks of hair fall around your ankles, gathering like molted feathers. No mirror is offered. You feel the absence by sensation alone. The lightness, the breeze against skin that used to be hidden, the way your ears suddenly seem too visible. You do not cry, not here, not for this. The scrub comes next. Your skin is scraped with a cloth soaked in vinegar, and lie, it burns but no one reacts. The woman washing you has done this 100 times. She is efficient, not cruel. She does not look at your face. She does not speak. She kneels, scrubs, stands, moves on. You are a surface, not a soul, a task to complete. You stare at a crack in the tile grout and breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. When it is over, a rough towel is handed to you. It smells of iron and starch. You dry yourself and are handed a uniform from a nearby shelf. It is the same grey as the walls, the same as every other girl. The fabric is coarse, poorly fitted. The collar is stiff enough to itch. The sleeves are long enough to swallow your wrists. The apron is white for now. You are given stockings and a pair of boots that don't match in size. When you look down, your feet seem to belong to someone else. Your old clothes are gone. No one tells you where. You do not ask. You've learned already that questions only stretch the silence wider. You are led to a small storage room. A bucket and a rag are waiting by the door. You're told which corridor to scrub. No explanation, no gesture of welcome. Just an assigned task and the quiet expectation that you will comply. The girl who shaved your hair walks past with a load of sheets. She does not glance at you. A woman in a white armband passes with a clipboard. Her eyes move over you briefly, then away. Another girl kneels in the corner, scrubbing at a dried stain with knuckles pink from friction. She does not pause when you approach. You dip the rag in the bucket, wring it out with trembling fingers, and begin. The water is already grey by the third tile. Your knees ache against the stone. The cold has settled in your fingers and toes like dust in an unused room. The cloth rasps against the grout. You find a rhythm. It helps. Scrub, reach, rinse, wring. You focus on the lines between the tiles. You pretend they mean something. The corridor stretches on ahead. Blank doors, iron sconces, polished railings dulled by use. There are no paintings, no curtains, nothing soft, only the sounds of buckets sloshing, brushes scraping, and footsteps that never pause long enough to mean trouble. You scrub until your knees ache and the water turns black. No one tells you to stop. Eventually, the bucket is taken from your side and replaced without a word. You keep going. When the hallway is finally declared clean, you are led back to the dormitory. You fold yourself into the cot assigned to you, narrow, creaking, unfamiliar. The blanket itches. The pillow is flat. The girl in the bed beside yours turns her back and closes her eyes. The light clicks off. The bell wakes you. It doesn't ring so much as snap, sharp, metallic, like something dropped into boiling water. It sounds twice, always twice, no more, no less. The first bell is for waking. The second is for kneeling. You don't question why you're expected to kneel before you've had a moment to breathe, let alone think. That's not part of the routine. Thinking is not scheduled. Obedience is. You rise before your muscles are ready. You're not allowed to stretch. You're not allowed to speak. The room is dim, even as the gas light flickers to life in the hallway. You and the other girls kneel beside your beds in silence, heads bowed, hands folded, eyes shut. You're not told what to pray. You're simply told to do it. Some whisper lines from Psalms. Others just breathe and hope it counts. The floor is stone, Cold bites through your knees, climbs your spine. The smell of damp wool and sour sweat hangs low in the air. No one coughs, no one shifts. The silence is more than rule, it's ritual. A girl once spoke during prayer the week before you arrived. You didn't see her again until the next Sunday, scrubbing the flagstones in the outer corridor with a toothbrush and red knuckles. You haven't heard her voice since. After prayer, you rise, you dress in the same uniform. Stiff, grey, unflattering. It fits no one. You tie your apron tight. A crooked knot earns demerits. There's no mirror, but you check your reflection faintly in the dark window. If your collar is creased or your hem is dirty, you'll find out when the supervisor inspects the ward. And she will. She always does. You wash in cold water, dry your face on the same shared towel, and line up in twos to descend the stairs. No one talks. You could hear a teacup break 2 rooms over. You pass the chapel on your right. You don't stop unless instructed. A chalkboard lists the week's scripture. Repentance, modesty, endurance. The verses change. The themes do not. Breakfast is porridge, always porridge. Sometimes oats, sometimes barley, sometimes something unnameable with a film on top. You eat it in silence, seated at a long wooden table with 30 other girls who do not look up. A woman in a navy apron sits at the head with a Bible. She reads while you chew. Her voice is steady and without expression. She does not pause when someone drops a spoon. She does not look up when someone coughs. The readings are chosen for effect. The wages of sin, the value of chastity, the punishment of Eve. Sometimes she closes the book halfway through and just recites. You suspect she's memorized most of it. You do not ask. When the bowls are cleared, you stand again in rows. You are assigned your morning duties by surname. No pleasantries, just locations. Hallway, laundry, kitchen, stairs, back courtyard. You are sent in different directions like packages. No one complains. No one trades tasks. To object is to volunteer for discipline. Your assignment is the mending room. The air is thick with dust and hot with body heat. There are 12 sewing stations and a supervisor who sits near the window, knitting something you're not allowed to look at. You are handed a stack of shirts, men's shirts, made from stiff cotton and badly hemmed. Your job is to undo the last girl's work and stitch it properly. The garments will be sold. You will not be told where. The buttons are brittle and the thread is cheap. Your fingers are already sore from yesterday, but it doesn't matter. A girl 2 chairs down pricks her thumb. She winces and shakes it. The supervisor glances up but says nothing. Blood on the fabric means the shirt is burned. She'll lose her supper if it happens twice. You keep your head down. At precisely 11 the bell rings again. You line up for chapel service. There are no pews, just wooden benches with no backs. You kneel, then stand, then kneel again. A man in a clerical collar gives a sermon on the sanctity of motherhood. He says the Lord loves a penitent woman. He says suffering is the first step to grace. He says your children, should they survive, may forgive you one day. He does not ask your name. He does not look at your faces. When the chapel empties, you are marched back to your duties. You are not given time to reflect. Reflection is not productive. Lunch is broth, thin, salty, sometimes greasy. You eat quickly, quietly, eyes down. The reading at lunch is from Proverbs. It goes on for 14 minutes. No one asks what it means. That is not the point. The afternoon brings more work. You are moved to the courtyard to scrub the flagstones. Your back twinges sharply as you lean forward, belly pressing into your thighs in a way that didn't used to happen. You grit your teeth and keep going. The sun does not reach the back wall and your fingers go stiff in the water. The girl beside you sniffs. She does not wipe her nose. You do not offer your sleeve. Conversation is forbidden, even whispered. One of the supervisors walks in measured steps between you, the hem of her skirt whispering across the gravel. She carries a small notepad. She writes without looking up. You do not know what she records, you only know it matters. At one point, you see a woman watching from an upper window, older, pale, wearing a bonnet with fraying ribbons. She does not look like staff. She does not look like one of you. She holds a teacup in both hands and sips as if observing cattle. You do not wave, you do not look long. You return to scrubbing. At 3, you are given tea, weak, lukewarm, served in cracked mugs. There is a biscuit sometimes. If one of the girls has displeased the matron that week, there is no biscuit. No explanation is given. The absence is the message. You return to the sewing room. The shirts are still there. The girl with the pricked finger is gone. A new girl takes her place. She doesn't speak. You don't ask why she's here. You never do. You sew. The rhythm lulls you. In, pull, knot, snip. If you do it well, you might be given sock mending next week. It is considered lighter work. It is a reward. You do not hope for it. Hope is not encouraged. The girl beside you hums under her breath. It's almost silent, barely more than a vibration. The supervisor says nothing, but later, at inspection, the girl's name is read aloud and followed by the words, reflection duty. You do not see her at supper. You assume she's kneeling in a stairwell somewhere, or copying out psalms in pencil until her fingers cramp. That is what happened to another girl last week, after she was caught smiling. Your own name is not called. You're invisible enough to be safe. That too is a skill. Supper is potatoes and cabbage, or what was once cabbage. It's boiled to the point of surrender. There is no seasoning, no butter, no meat. You eat it anyway. You are hungry. You are always hungry. The hunger becomes a kind of company. You sit at the long table under the same flickering gaslight, the same warped floorboards, the same silence. 30 girls eating without speaking, 30 backs straight, 30 faces blank. A painted motto hangs above the head of the room, printed in flaking gold leaf. Purity through labour. It is underlined in red. You do not know who painted it. You do not know when. You only know that every time you raise your eyes from your plate, it is there, unwavering, unblinking, untouchable. You finish your food. You fold your hands in your lap. You wait for the bell. One morning, as you kneel beside your cot at the sound of the bell, same as always, eyes closed, back straight, toes curled against the cold, you hear the matron's footfalls approach in steady rhythm, her heels tapping a private code into the tile. She stops by your bed. She doesn't shout. She doesn't need to. Stand up, she says, voice clipped. They've come. You know who she means, even if no one explains it. You've heard the phrase whispered before, caught in the stairwell or half mumbled over cold tea. They've come. It doesn't mean visitors. It means examination, inspection, judgment. You rise, already smoothing the front of your apron before you're fully standing. The others in your row avoid your eyes. Some sit on their beds with hands folded. One girl, halfway through brushing her hair, pauses mid-stroke and doesn't move again. You walk toward the hallway like it's something rehearsed, like a part you've played before. You haven't, but the fear fits quickly, like the uniform, like the silence. The matron leads you down the corridor. The walls here are slightly yellowed, the tiles a shade more cracked. You pass the linen closet, the locked medicine cabinet, the door that never opens. You're brought to a side parlour you've never entered. The room is warm, unnaturally so, and the fireplace crackles too cheerfully for the setting. A long table sits at the centre, bare except for a closed ledger, an ink pot, and several neat piles of paper. 3 chairs are lined up behind it. They're already occupied. The first man is younger than you expected, perhaps in his early 30s, with gold-rimmed spectacles and a trimmed beard that looks like it's been shaped with care. He taps a fountain pen on the desk as he reads from a card. The second is older, plump, with a walrus moustache and a waistcoat that pulls tight at the middle. He breathes through his nose like it's a task. The third says nothing at all. He has a notebook already open and doesn't look up from it. You don't know which one is the doctor. You suspect they all are. The matron says your name. She does not say anything else. She folds her arms behind her back and takes a step to the side. You are now centered in the room, facing the table, hands at your sides. The men do not introduce themselves. They do not ask how you're feeling. One gestures. You are meant to remove your apron. You obey. The examination is not violent. That's almost worse. It's efficient, mechanical. One of the men asks how far along you are. You say you don't know. He makes a mark in the ledger. You're asked if this is your first. You nod. Another mark. You are asked if you know the father. You pause. The silence stretches. The pen hovers over the page. You nod again. They do not ask his name. They do not ask what happened. They move on. You are asked to step behind the folding screen. You do. The younger doctor joins you. He asks you to lie back on the narrow table while he places 2 fingers on your abdomen. His touch is cold and impersonal. He does not meet your eyes. He mutters something about fetal position and uterine tone. You do not understand the words. You are not meant to. The examination ends as abruptly as it began. He leaves the screen without dismissing you. You pull your dress down and stand waiting. No one tells you to return to the front of the room. You just do. The men confer in low voices. The younger one scribbles a few more notes. The older one clears his throat and speaks. Finally, and with the voice of someone who said this many times before. It appears we have another regrettable case of poor moral instruction. You are not told to respond. You are not expected to. The man continues. It is unfortunate, he says, addressing the matron now, that these girls receive no proper education about the consequences of their behaviour until it is too late. This one is lucky. No signs of disease, strong pulse, clear eyes. She should carry to term without trouble. He doesn't say you, he says this one. The other men nod as if discussing the quality of a half-broken chair. They shift their papers. The third man, who has said nothing until now, finally lifts his head. She'll serve as an effective moral example. Plain features, obedient disposition. Make sure she's visible during meal prayers. The matron nods. She has not looked at you since saying your name. You are dismissed with a flick of the pen. You walk back down the corridor slower than before. Your legs feel heavier, though no one touched them. Your face burns not from words but from their absence. You don't remember closing the parlour door. You only know it's shut behind you, and that you were on the other side of it. You return to your assigned tasks without being told. You kneel in the chapel that afternoon, like always. Kneeling takes longer now. The weight in your middle throws your balance off. You bow your head when the verse is read. You say nothing during the sermon. You scrub the same stretch of tile again, even though it was already clean. No one comments. No one speaks to you. But when supper comes, your seat has been moved. It is now at the head of the table, 1 row closer to the woman who reads scripture aloud. You are not told why, you already know. The girl beside you doesn't sit as close as the others do. Her elbows stay tight to her ribs. She eats quickly and does not glance your way. Above your head, the painted motto reads, "Purity through labour." You do not feel pure, you do not feel laborious. You feel watched. You've been waiting, not in hope, and not with any kind of preparation, but in the way someone waits for a storm to arrive. You've been watching your body change for weeks now. Watching the apron tighten, watching your feet swell, watching the other girls look at your stomach, then quickly away. You've said nothing. You weren't asked, but your balance has shifted. Your breath has shortened. Your belly presses harder into the scrub bucket each morning, and kneeling at prayer now takes twice as long. You have to sit differently when sewing. You grunt slightly when you rise from bed. You try not to. You always try not to. No one speaks of it. No one has to. The pain begins as it always seems to in stories. Quietly, almost like a suggestion. A slow pulling ache across the base of your back. You're still in bed, lying on your side in the pre-dawn dark. The bell hasn't rung. The gas light in the hallway is still out. The girl beside you hasn't moved. You count to 20, then 40. You wait. You press a hand to your abdomen and feel something shift beneath it. Hard, then soft again. It is not sharp. Not yet. You sit up. The cold air hits your arms first. Your legs swing over the edge of the cot, and the floor feels like slate beneath your bare feet. You dress without noise. Muscle memory now. You wrap the apron tighter than usual, then looser. You sit on the edge of the cot and breathe through your nose. The pain returns. Deeper now, more decisive. It's no longer something you can pretend away. You leave the dormitory and move into the hallway, one hand against the wall. You consider where to go. The matron's door? The supervisor's quarters? You hesitate. You've been taught to wait for instruction. Always. You aren't sure whether this qualifies as emergency or interruption. But then another wave comes, sharp and low, and you flinch in spite of yourself. It knocks the breath from your chest. You knock on the matron's door once, nothing. Again. It opens. She doesn't speak. Her eyes move from your face to your belly, to your hand gripping the doorknob. She gestures for you to follow. The walk is short but slow. She does not take your arm. She does not ask questions. You are brought to a cold room with stone walls and a narrow bed. The bed has a folded sheet on it, nothing more. There is no midwife waiting, no fire, no basin steaming in the corner, just a clean cloth on the table and a chipped porcelain jug. The matron leaves without a word. You lie down. The pain comes in intervals at first, spread out and cruelly gentle, like a warning. You try to time your breathing against it. You shift positions. You lie on your side. You curl your knees. You press your fists into the mattress. Nothing helps. The contractions grow closer, angrier. There is a tightness now that doesn't release. The cold of the room fades from your skin because your body is no longer paying attention to anything but itself. You grip the iron frame and begin to count aloud, not because it helps, but because it's the only sound you're allowed to make. No one comes. When the door finally opens, it's not with urgency. A woman enters, older, expressionless, with an apron stiff from soap. She has sleeves rolled to her elbows and a towel over one arm. She moves without comment. She checks between your legs and nods, not at you, but at the space itself. You'll need to push soon, she says. Then she looks down at the floor. Try not to scream. You'll frighten the others. She sets the towel on the edge of the bed. No gloves, no names. She does not tell you what stage you're in. She doesn't ask whether you're frightened or ready. She doesn't explain how long it might take. She places a basin beside the bed and folds the sheet back halfway. Then she waits. The next few hours are not hours in the way you've known them. They are something else. Unmeasured, circular, aching. Time is no longer minutes, but contractions, pressure, small humiliations that happen over and over again. You try to push when told. You try not to sob. You breathe through clenched teeth and press your knees apart when the pain tells you to curl. You feel your body tear and stretch and resist. You feel your voice rising once without your permission, and then bitten back down again. The woman wipes your brow once, not with comfort, but practicality. You are sweating. You are shaking. She tells you not to faint. You nod. Your vision pulses at the edges, and then, suddenly, you're empty. There's a wet slapping sound, then a pause, then something. Someone lets out a rasping cry. Small, incomplete. The woman lifts the baby and wraps it tightly in a towel. You catch only the briefest glimpse, a leg, a patch of scalp, something sticky and real and yours. You reach out, your hand half raised. You do not say please. You just open your fingers. The woman doesn't notice, or chooses not to. She leaves the room with the bundle. You lie back. Your legs tremble. Your skin stings. You feel a strange kind of cold settling in your hips. The afterbirth comes with a shallow rush of pressure, and something that smells metallic. No one says anything about it. No one explains what happens next. The sheet beneath you is soaked. You press a palm to your stomach. It is soft now, collapsed inward. Your body feels used. You wait for someone to return. Not to offer congratulations, not even to clean you, but just to say the next thing. To tell you what to do. You do not know whether to stand or lie still. You do not know whether to expect someone. The door remains closed. Eventually, your legs stop shaking. You reach for the cloth on the table and wipe between your thighs. You are not gentle. There is no point. The blood has already begun to dry in the creases of your knees. Your underthings are gone. Your nightdress is folded in the corner, untouched. You put it on. The fabric clings to your back. When the matron arrives, she does not knock. She enters with a clipboard and a paper folded neatly at the top. She looks at your face only once. "It was a girl," she says. "You'll rest until further notice. Laundry will have need of you soon enough." That's all. She closes the door behind her. No one says whether the child is healthy. No one says where she's gone. No one asks if you want to name her, or hold her, or see her. The baby is a fact that has now been processed. You are not given a record. You are not given a choice. You are not given anything. You lie in bed, hollow. The worst of the bleeding has stopped, though not completely. The cloth between your legs is changed twice a day by whichever girl is assigned to the recovery rota. None of them look you in the eye. They lift the sheets with practiced hands, slide the stained linen out, press a clean fold in place, and leave. You are not spoken to. You are not expected to speak. Your body is still considered too fragile for labour, but not fragile enough for compassion. You're given gruel in the mornings and broth in the evenings. Your name is not used. Your stomach is soft now, slack. You can feel the stretch in the skin, the empty weight of it. You press your hand lightly to the place where she was. Sometimes you do it without noticing. Other times you do it deliberately, hoping that the imprint might still be warm. No one has told you anything. You do not know whether she is still in the building, whether she was washed, whether she was held, whether she was named. On the third day, a woman enters your room wearing a blue armband and carrying a book. She does not knock. She stands beside your bed and recites a passage from Corinthians in a flat voice. It is about mercy, or sin. You can't follow it. When she finishes, she opens the book and writes something down. She leaves without looking at your face. Later that day, you hear a baby crying somewhere down the corridor. You hold your breath and strain to listen, but it fades quickly. It could be yours. It could be someone else's. Sound travels strangely here, echoing off the tiled walls and closing doors. You hear footsteps that aren't there, doors that don't exist. A basin clatters in the hallway, and you flinch, hand still on your belly. The next morning, another woman arrives, this one older, with her hair tucked under a net cap and a silver cross around her neck. She carries a small bottle and a folded towel. She tells you plainly that the child is to be baptized. You do not object. You are not asked. She moves to the corner of the room where a basin has been placed. You sit upright, blanket clutched to your chest. A young woman brings a towel-wrapped bundle into the older woman. The towel unwinds slightly, revealing a flash of pale skin, a wisp of hair. You look down, you try to watch, but your vision blurs not from tears, but from the sudden pressure behind your eyes. Something swelling against bone and refusing to surface. You hear the woman say words you recognize from Sunday sermons, though they sound thinner now. Hollow. She says the name of a saint. You aren't sure which one. She anoints the forehead and pours a trickle of water onto the scalp. The baby whimpers, then quiets. You want to ask what name she used, but your mouth stays closed. The question would be useless now. You understand that the name isn't yours to know. It never was. After the baptism, the baby is taken away again. You are not allowed to hold her. You are not allowed to see her face. The woman assures you, before she leaves, that this is a blessing, that the child has been saved from sin, that she will have a better life now, that you should take comfort in that. She does not wait for you to respond. She closes the door behind her. You lie down again. Your arms ache in a way that has nothing to do with muscle. You feel like something has been cut off. No blood, no wound, just absence. Something you had and then didn't. You don't speak the rest of the day. No one notices. Silence is expected. That evening, a girl brings you a tin mug of barley tea and a plain biscuit. She sets them down beside your bed, without comment. As she turns to go, you ask, softly, if she's seen a child. A baby girl. The girl pauses, just for a moment. Then she shakes her head and leaves. The door clicks shut behind her. You do not ask again. On the 5th day, you're allowed to walk to the washroom alone. The matron tells you your strength is returning. You nod. The basin water is cold. The soap smells of coal tar. You scrub your hands, then your arms, then your chest, as if something might still come away. Your reflection in the mirror is thinner than you remembered. Pale, dull-eyed, with blotches beneath the skin where your sleep refuses to settle. You look like someone in mourning, but you are not allowed to mourn. After you return to your bed, you're given a clean shift and instructed to sit upright during inspection. The supervisor arrives with a clipboard and a tin of chalk. She writes something at the top of your file, then marks your bedpost with a small white X. You do not ask what it means. You suspect it's a step toward resuming duties. You're not wrong. That afternoon, a man arrives in a black coat. He does not enter your room. You see him from the hallway, standing by the door with a small leather case and a sealed envelope. He speaks to the matron in low tones. She nods twice, then he leaves. You do not know if he's a doctor or a clerk or something in between. That evening during prayers, the matron approaches your bed. She carries the envelope. She places it on the foot of your mattress and says without expression, "The child has been placed." You sit still. You stare at the envelope. It is sealed but unmarked. You reach for it slowly, then stop. You ask where. The matron adjusts her sleeve and shakes her head. That is not information we provide. You ask if it was a home, a family, a hospital. She sighs once and repeats the same phrase. The child has been placed. Then she adds, almost as an afterthought, "You've been given a second chance. Best not waste it." She walks away before you can say anything more. You hold the envelope in your hands, unsure whether it's meant for you or simply passed through you. It contains a copy of your intake record and a note that you will return to light duties in 3 days. There is no mention of the baby. There is no mention of the birth. There is only your name, scratched in ink, and a stamped line that reads, "Discharged from confinement, cleared for reassignment." You fold the paper once and place it beneath your pillow. You lie down without removing your apron. That night, you dream of a child you never touched. You dream of a woman at a desk, stamping names onto ledgers. You dream of the wrong name being used, of a different girl's child being mistaken for yours, of a cart being wheeled out before dawn, of someone forgetting to write the weight. You dream of small hands wrapped in too large cloth, of blue lips, of stillness mistaken for sleep. You wake before the bell. The envelope is still under your pillow. You dress slowly. You tie your apron. You do not cry. You do not know whether your child was given away, buried, or forgotten. The letter stays under your pillow for a week. You still aren't entirely sure what it means. You unfold it each morning before prayer and smooth the creases flat across your lap. The ink is already beginning to fade along the fold lines. You read the words again and again. Discharged from confinement, cleared for reassignment. They feel like sentences lifted from a document that was never meant for you, or rather, that you were never meant to read. You wonder how many others have read the same letter, how many others folded it quietly, placed it beneath their heads at night, and woke no closer to understanding what had happened to them. No one speaks of the child. No one asks whether you're ready to leave. Readiness is not part of the process. You return to half days in the laundry first, bending over steam-filled vats, starching linens that don't belong to you. and pinning shirts that will be sold to customers who will never know who touched them. The heat makes your stitches slow and your eyes blur, but the supervisor says nothing. She marks your name on the rota in pencil, and each day you're expected to arrive, to fold, to scrub, and to stay quiet. By the third day, you stop reading the letter. By the fifth, you stop carrying it. Your body is healing. That's what the matron says. You've stopped bleeding mostly. You no longer feel like your ribs are hollow. The heaviness remains, but no one asks after it. No one expects it to go away. It's understood that some things won't. You speak only when prompted. You sleep on your side to dull the ache in your hips. You still wake in the night sometimes, expecting to hear something, a cry, a voice, the sound of a latch turning softly. But the dormitory stays silent. The silence, like everything here, has become routine. Then one afternoon, your name is called during prayer. The matron doesn't look up from her ledger. She says you're to report to the front office at second bell. No explanation, no change in her voice, just the words passed down like laundry assignments or kitchen duties. You nod once and return to your sewing. The girls beside you don't glance over. A name being called means something, but no one ever says what. You arrive on time. The office is unfamiliar. The carpet is newer here, the wallpaper less stained. The window is open a crack, letting in a breeze that smells faintly of coal smoke and horses. A woman sits behind a desk covered in papers and unsharpened pencils. Her ink-stained fingers flutter over a stack of forms. She wears a brooch shaped like a dove. She does not smile. "Sit," she says, and you do. She introduces herself as a placement officer. Her name is irrelevant. You forget it within seconds. She begins reading from a list of available opportunities, names of boarding houses, textile mills, laundries, and domestic positions. She pauses after each one, giving you just enough time to consider them without inviting a response. There's a laundry 2 streets over looking for reliable girls. The work is hard, but the wages are steady. Room and board provided. The matron knows the supervisor and says she'll vouch for you, assuming you don't speak out of turn. There's a glove factory in Eastcheap, but they've had issues with the girls falling behind, so they've been told not to take anyone troubled. You won't qualify. There's a family in Clerkenwell who needs a scullery maid, but only if you're willing to live in. They have children. You're advised not to mention your own. You are not asked what you want. The woman behind the desk asks if you can write. You nod. She slides a form across the table and tells you to confirm your details. The name is yours. The rest of it, age, background, former place of employment, reason for admission, is not. Or perhaps it is just written in words you would never have chosen. Moral danger. Indiscretion. Eligible for discharge under supervision. You do not question it. You sign your name in the box provided. She doesn't look up. Another sheet is placed before you. This one is longer, typed with sections blocked out for different types of behaviour. It reads like a contract, though it is never called one. It says that you agree to uphold the moral expectations of a Christian woman, that you will not associate with unsuitable persons, that you will maintain your new employment and your new place of residence, that you will not enter into any arrangement deemed inappropriate without prior permission from the parish, that you will not speak about your time at the home to anyone, including employers, family or clergy, without written consent. You pause. Your hand tightens slightly on the pen. You read the last line again. It says that, should you fail to abide by these terms, you may be returned to institutional custody at any time. You sign anyway. There is no alternative. The woman stamps both sheets and files them into a drawer. She reaches for another form and begins marking boxes. She does not explain what they mean. You suspect they categorize you into something. Ready, cautious, unreliable. You've seen boxes like that before, on laundry tags and supply slips. You wonder what box was ticked for your child. When the paperwork is done, the woman folds your copy of the agreement and slips it into an envelope. She tells you it's for your records, though she warns you not to lose it. You understand, this means you'll be expected to show it again. You are told your departure will be scheduled within the week. A representative from the laundry will collect you on Thursday morning. You are to be bathed, dressed in the clothes provided, and prepared to leave by first bell. You are not to bring anything that was not issued to you. You are not to speak to the other girls about your placement. You are not to write any letters in advance. You nod. You keep nodding. It's all you're allowed. The woman makes a final note in your file. She clicks the pen closed with a sound that cuts through the room like the last tick of a clock. You've been given a second chance, she says, the same way the matron did, the same way the baptism woman did, the same way the pamphlet said, long ago, when you stood outside this place, with cold fingers and the shape of a future you hadn't asked for already taking root inside you. You do not reply. You stand. As you leave the office, the door closes softly behind you. The corridor outside is empty. You hear the supper bell in the distance. The other girls are already lining up, filing down the hall, with blank faces and stiff collars. You fall in behind them without being told. You sit at the long table. You bow your head when the scripture is read. You eat your bread and beans without looking up. The girl beside you fidgets with her spoon. You do not speak to her. Above you, the motto is still painted on the wall: purity through labour. It gleams faintly in the gaslight. A fly crawls across one of the letters. No one brushes it away. The envelope with your discharge form is tucked into your apron pocket. It is creased at the corners. You have not looked at it since leaving the office. You do not feel free. You do not feel saved. You feel filed. And you know that as long as you remain quiet, the world will go on, pretending you never needed saving in the first place. You leave before dawn. The matron does not see you off. The supervisor does not wish you well. A girl you don't know helps you dress in the garments they've laid out. A brown skirt, a washed blouse, a stiff apron that doesn't belong to you and never will. The shoes are too tight. You do not complain. You tie the laces yourself and fold your hands in your lap while you wait. At the appointed hour, a man arrives with a cart. He speaks to no one but the woman at the front desk. You are handed your discharge papers and told to step up into the back. The cart smells of coal and hay. You sit on a folded sack, gripping the envelope with both hands. The ride is short. You pass shops you've never entered, houses you'll never see again, corners where people gather without noticing you. You might as well be another sack of laundry. When the cart stops, you climb down without assistance. The building is narrow and brick with soot stains above the windows and a crooked sign that reads Sparrow and Sons Laundry. You are told this is your new place. The man leaves. You do not watch him go. The forewoman is already waiting inside. She is tall with sharp shoulders and a voice that doesn't need raising. She looks you up and down once, then tells you to follow her. No welcome. No introduction. You pass through the main workroom where steam fogs the windows and the air smells like boiled linen and scorched soap. Girls move between tubs and tables with practiced rhythm. Some glance at you, most don't. Your duties are simple. You'll wash, starch, press and fold. You'll be given a cot in the rear dormitory and a shared cup for tea. Breakfast is before bell, supper is after bell. You are not to leave the premises without permission. You are not to speak to the customers. You are not to be late. You are not to cause trouble. The forewoman does not ask your name. She refers to you as the new one or you there. On your second day, another girl addresses you by name. The forewoman tells her not to. The work is harder than the charity home. Hotter, faster, more punishing. You slip once in your first week, dropping a tub of wet sheets across the floor. No one helps you clean it. The floor is scrubbed again, and the starch docked from your wages. On your third day, your hand blisters at the iron. You wrap it in a rag and continue. At night you sleep in a row of cots behind the drying room. The air is thick with steam, even after dark. The girls whisper to each other sometimes, but not to you. One of them snores, One talks in her sleep. You wake often thinking you hear crying, but it's never your own. You stare at the ceiling and trace the pattern of damp spots with your eyes. You do not pray. On your first Sunday off, you walk to the edge of the marketplace. It's crowded but not noisy, just voices folded over each other, rising and falling in waves. You keep your head down. You don't linger at the church doors. You step into a side alley and sit on a crate until the bells stop ringing. Then you return. The forewoman doesn't ask where you went, but she watches you more closely for the rest of the day. You are not punished. You are not welcomed. You are simply placed again. The city is bigger than you remember, or maybe it's not. Maybe you're just smaller now. You pass bakeries and clothiers and shops with glass windows you aren't allowed to touch. You see families walking, mothers holding children by the wrist. You feel nothing, or you try to. You remind yourself not to feel. It doesn't help. You eat what is given to you. You wear what is handed down. Your wages are half what the boys earn. You save what you can in a tin beneath your cot. The rest disappears in deductions: soap, starch, broken buttons, thread. No one explains the math. You stop asking. Sometimes at night you still reach for your belly before you fall asleep. You catch yourself and stop. The skin there is slack now. The stretch marks are faint but still visible. You bathe quickly so the other girls won't see. One of the girls, a younger one with a soft voice, asks if you've ever been to the hospital. She means the lying-in charity. You shake your head. She doesn't believe you. She doesn't press. You keep your head down. The weeks blur, the months do too. You mend the same sheets, fold the same collars, burn your wrist on the same iron, and stop bothering to pull your sleeves down. You are noticed only when you err, and you are never asked where you came from. That's how you know they already know. The laundry receives regular bundles from the hospital, linens, gowns, bandages. You are assigned to them twice a week. You do not ask where they came from. You do not ask who wore them. You try not to read the stains. Some things shouldn't be remembered. One afternoon, while you fold pillowcases, you overhear two of the older women talking near the window. Their voices are low but clear. There was a girl left at the hospital, one says. A baby, last spring I think. Just vanished from the registry. Might have died, the other says. Might have gone to one of those wet nurses. You never know with those girls. Pretty thing, they said. Brown hair. You freeze, only for a second. Then you keep folding. You do not look up. You do not ask what they meant. You do not ask whether the mother came back. You say nothing. You've learnt not to. You notice her on a Wednesday. She arrives with the morning delivery. She's younger than most, with sleeves that hang too long past her wrists, and a bonnet tied a little too tightly under her chin. The forewoman doesn't introduce her. She rarely does. The girl is pointed toward the washroom and told to make herself useful. No one offers her tea. No one shows her the buckets. She follows another worker toward the back, clutching her satchel with both hands. She doesn't speak for the first 2 days. That's not unusual. New girls are often silent at first, quiet with confusion, or shame, or exhaustion, or all three. But this one stays silent even when spoken to. She nods and shrugs, moves where she's told, and keeps her eyes on the floor. She burns herself once on the iron. You see her flinch, then keep going. You recognise the signs. She sits alone at meals. She keeps her back to the wall, and her elbows tucked in close. When the others whisper to each other during mending, she does not join. You see her pause sometimes, as if she might try and then change her mind. She speaks only when directly addressed, and then only in short replies. She doesn't ask questions. She doesn't linger in the washroom. She folds her blanket neatly each morning, and her boots are always lined up straight beneath her cot. You've been here long enough now that your silence is no longer suspicious. It's expected. No one asks why you don't talk to the new girl. No one wonders whether you see yourself in her, but you do. Not in the way she walks or speaks or holds herself, but in the way she seems to disappear around the edges of the room, as if she's still waiting for someone to notice she's arrived. She's given the sheets to scrub, hospital linens, stained and stiff, the kind that leave a film on your hands even after rinsing. You watch her arms shake as she lifts the bucket. You remember the first week you were handed the same job. You remember the weight of it, the steam in your throat, the ache in your lower back that never left. You help her once, silently, without being asked. You don't speak. You just lift the edge of the basin when she drops it and hold it steady while she scoops water back inside. She glances at you, startled, then nods. That's all. No words, no thanks. She doesn't need to say it. You wouldn't know how to respond if she did. Days pass. She settles into the rhythm. She doesn't cry, not where anyone can hear. She bruises easily. You notice a mark on her wrist one morning, just above the cuff. She hides it well, but not well enough. You've seen them before. The kind that come from holding things too tightly, or from being held too tightly by someone else. She never explains. You never ask. One evening, you find her in the washroom. After hours, her face damp, eyes red. She says it's the steam. You nod. She doesn't repeat herself. She leaves without drying her hands. You let the door close behind her before rinsing your own rag in silence. Later that week, the forewoman assigns her to folding with you. You sit side by side at the table near the back of the room, pressing creases into men's trousers and stacking napkins into crates. She works slowly, carefully, always checking twice. You don't speak for the first hour. Then, without meaning to, you tell her she can press harder, that the cloth can take it. She nods. She presses harder. You don't say anything else. Over time, she begins to match your pace. She learns to keep her hands dry, to hold the folds in place with her thumb, to finish each pile at just the right height. You move in tandem like clockwork, silent and precise. She still doesn't talk much, but she watches and she listens. One night, you see her staring at her comb. It's cracked at the handle, missing a tooth. She frowns at it, then places it under her pillow without comment. You say nothing. The next morning, before the first bell, you place your old hairbrush on the edge of her cot. It's worn smooth from use, the bristles soft with age, the handle dulled from years of hands that no longer remember how to hold much of anything gently. You don't wrap it, you don't leave a note. You just place it there and return to your cot. She finds it after morning prayer. She picks it up slowly, turning it over in her hands. She doesn't ask who left it. She doesn't need to. That evening she brushes her hair with it by the wash basin, long strokes from root to end, slow and careful. She doesn't look at you, but she places it gently in the pocket of her apron when she's finished. The next day she folds your half of the sheets while you're called to the back storeroom. When you return, the stack is already done. She says nothing. You nod once. She nods back. This is how it happens. Not in speeches, not in gestures, just in moments, in hands that move in sync, in quiet rooms, in a borrowed hairbrush and a shared silence. You don't know her story. You don't know what brought her here. You don't know whether she's waiting for a child or running from one. You don't ask. She doesn't offer. You give her what you can. That's all. It's enough. You're wiping the front window when you see the headline. The paper is folded under the arm of a man passing by, well-dressed, older, with a moustache combed into a cruel little shape. He stops for a moment to adjust his gloves, and the page flutters open, just long enough for you to read the top line. Moral decline in the working class. What is to be done with our girls? He doesn't see you, or if he does, he chooses not to. His eyes move across the building like it's part of the pavement. He adjusts his hat, straightens his collar, and walks on. You do not follow. You do not read the article. You already know what it says. You've heard the sermons. You've seen the pamphlets. You've walked past churchyard posters warning against female intemperance and fallen women. You know the phrases by heart now. You know the rhythm of accusation. They don't speak directly about people. They speak about conditions, symptoms, trends. They say things like, decency must be restored. Like the streets are no place for virtue. Like sin wears a woman's face. You've never seen a headline that calls you a mother, or a worker, or even a girl. You're always part of something larger, darker, vaguer, a crisis, a warning, a case. Once, during a slow afternoon, one of the other girls found a scrap of newspaper in the bottom of a delivery box. She smoothed it out and read it aloud under her breath. It was a story about a young woman, unnamed, unmarried, found dead in a boarding house. The article called her unfortunate 4 times. It never called her anything else. It speculated on whether she had been in service, whether she had known men, whether she had been a regular. It did not mention what she had liked, what she had wanted, whether she had laughed. The girls passed the paper around. Some scoffed. One girl folded it neatly and slipped it under her mattress. You try to forget it. You don't succeed. On Sundays, a local church group sends visitors. Women in tidy coats, usually with lace gloves and clipped voices. They arrive with Bibles and baskets and boxes of handkerchiefs stitched with verses. They say they've come to speak about dignity, about modesty, about the opportunity to reclaim your path. They bring tracts with titles like Clean Hands, Clean Heart, and Virtue Begins with Silence. They ask no questions. They speak in declarations. They call you dear and child and poor lamb. They speak as if you've been silent out of gratitude, not necessity, as if your compliance is a sign of healing, not exhaustion. You nod when they speak. You take the handkerchief. You fold it neatly and place it in your apron pocket. You never use it. One of the visitors once brought a little book, hardbound, blue, with a gold cross stamped on the cover. She said it contained testimonials. She opened it to a page and read aloud a passage from a girl who had come from a life of ruin and now thanked the institution for saving her soul. The writing was stilted, awkward, peppered with religious phrases that sounded planted. You wondered who really wrote it. You wondered whether the girl was still alive. You wondered if she remembered writing it at all. You say nothing. One Thursday, the laundry is visited by a small group of men in frock coats. They tour the facilities with the forewoman, nodding at the equipment, inspecting the soap inventory, commenting on the improved output. You and the other girls are told to keep working, but to look presentable. No one is to speak unless spoken to. One man, balding and florid, asks the forewoman whether any of them are reformed cases. He doesn't lower his voice. She nods in your direction without saying your name. You keep folding. He looks at you like you're something kept behind glass. He says it's good to see one of the redeemed contributing to society again. You wonder how many others he said that to. You wonder how many he remembers. After they leave, the forewoman tells you to mop the front step. She does not mention the conversation, neither do you. That night, you lie awake for hours. The bunk creaks each time you turn. You press your palms against your stomach, though it no longer hurts. You try to imagine your child's face. You try to imagine whether she has one yet, one that someone recognizes, one that someone has claimed. You picture a family, a nurse, a box of borrowed names. You picture a small coffin. You picture nothing. You stop. The following week, a new girl arrives. She's barely 15. She shakes when she holds the iron. Her fingers blister within the hour. She doesn't speak for the first 3 days. When she does, it's to ask if she'll be allowed to keep her baby. No one answers. You give her your extra rag for wrapping her hands. She doesn't thank you. She just nods and holds it close. In the weeks that follow, you overhear more whispers. That the doctor who visits once a month refers to the girls as cases. That a woman who asked too many questions was sent back to the home. That one girl left and came back again under a different name. Her file marked with ink too dark to read through. You learn to stop listening. You learn to keep your face blank when the priest visits. He comes once a quarter, thin and clean-shaven, always with a smile that doesn't touch his eyes. He gives a short sermon in the folding room. standing between tubs of pressed linens and baskets of yellowed shirts. He talks about redemption, about virtue, about how charity has given you back your place in the world. He says you're lucky, that you've been rescued. He says the wages might be low, but the dignity is high, that a second chance should be treated as a blessing, that many in your situation never recover, that you are one of the fortunate ones. You think of your name being crossed out on the ledger. You think of vinegar scrubs and clipped prayers. You think of your child baptized with someone else's voice and sent somewhere you'll never know. You think of silence labelled salvation, of obedience mistaken for peace. You do not speak. You do not meet his gaze. After he leaves, the forewoman tells you to clean the basin. You scrub it until your wrists ache. You are not angry. You do not have the energy for that anymore. But as you wring the cloth dry and watch the water swirl down the drain, you wonder how many men will call you saved before they remember they never asked whether you wanted to be. You hear the news from a boy delivering firewood. He lugs the crate in too fast and nearly slips on the wet stones. The forewoman scolds him for tracking mud across the floor. He shrugs, says the old place near the chapel's being gutted. They're tearing down the front wall. Someone said it's going to be a school now, for girls, paid for by a philanthropist's widow. He doesn't know the name of the widow or the school. He doesn't know what the building used to be. He calls it that place with the big iron gate. Says it always looked haunted. You wipe your hands on your apron and say nothing. You know the place he means, of course you do. The gate never opened unless someone was being let out or locked in. The stone steps were too narrow. The front door stuck in the summer and froze shut in the winter. The windows were never meant to open wide enough to escape through. There's a crack in the back wall by the old wash basin. Or there was. Maybe it's gone now, maybe everything is. You wonder what they'll do with the inscription above the entry. Purity through labour. Chiselled deep, painted gold. You used to see it every time you were marched out to scrub the yard or polish the step. You never looked up by choice. The words made your spine cold. Maybe the children won't notice it. Maybe it'll be painted over. Maybe the letters will fade, like the rest of you. You think about that building more than you should. You try not to, but it comes back in pieces. The vinegar, the starch, the breath held too long, the hours kneeling on floorboards that creaked like bones, the tin bowl that always smelled of lye, the matron's voice, measured and flat, reading from a book you never saw the cover of, the prayer you mouthed, not because you believed it, but because the silence afterward was worse. You don't talk about it. You can't. There's no room. No one wants to hear from girls like you. Not really. They want neat endings. They want your gratitude. They want to know that the system worked, that you were broken and then reassembled, and now you're fine. You're not fine. You're functional. You're quiet. You work hard. You keep your head down. You thank people when you're supposed to. You eat what you're given. You fold sheets. You mend hems. You pray when prompted. You keep your memories folded small, like the cloth squares you used to wrap the baby in, before they took her, before they told you she'd been placed, somewhere. And no, they couldn't say more. It wasn't for you to ask, it was done. You never saw her again. You don't know if she lived. You don't know if she was sent to a farm, or a foundling home, or buried with a number on a slate board. You've stopped picturing her face. You've stopped imagining how she might have looked like you. There's no record of you ever holding her. In your dreams, the ones you don't tell anyone about, sometimes you hear a cry in the next room. You get up to check, but the hallway is always empty. The door is always locked. Years pass. The city changes. Street names shift. Gas lamps become electric. New buildings rise next to old ones. The smell of coal doesn't sting quite the same, but the silences still linger. The laundries grow smaller. Machines do more now. The girls who work beside you change faster, rotate through, vanish. One falls ill and never returns. Another is caught stealing a bar of soap and sent away. No one speaks her name again. You remain. You become part of the wallpaper, reliable, quiet, a safe pair of hands. No one remembers where you came from. That suits them. It suits you too. One day the manager asks you to fill out a census card. You sit at the back table with a dull pencil and a page that feels larger than it should. It asks for your name, your age, your place of birth. You write slowly. You hesitate over each line. There's a space for number of children. You leave it blank. He checks the form later and frowns. Missed a bit, he says, pointing to the box. You shake your head and say, no. He doesn't push. He never does. He files the form. You are recorded as complete. Time continues. The old laundry finally closes. You're moved to a smaller one, on the edge of the borough. The beds are harder. The girls are louder. But the rules are the same. You don't mind. You didn't come here for peace. You come for routine, for something that doesn't ask questions, that doesn't care if you sleep through the night. That doesn't remind you what you used to be. Sometimes a girl will ask you where you were before. You say, the city. You say, another house. You say, long ago. You don't say, I was saved. You don't say, I was erased. Eventually, even that stops. No one asks anymore. They assume you've always been here, and maybe you have. One spring morning, someone tells you the records are being transferred, that the old ledgers, the ones in ink and soot and iron clasp, are being cleaned up, duplicated, sorted. Anything incomplete will be discarded. That's the word they use, discarded. You don't ask if your name is in them. You already know the answer. You were scrubbed from the log the moment you left. Not a discharge, not a dismissal, just a quiet removal. An empty line where you once slept. A note that says, sent on, no destination. There is no grave to visit, no record to chase, no story to claim, just a series of numbers in a fading file. Just a door that doesn't open anymore. The building becomes a school. The gate is repainted. The motto is scrubbed off the stone. They put a flower bed where the punishment bench used to be. Children laugh in the yard. Their shoes squeak on polished floors that were once scrubbed until the boards splintered. None of them know you were ever there. You lived, you carried, you obeyed, you were corrected, and then you were forgotten. That brings us to the end of tonight's episode. Not a story of scandal, but of silence. Of what happens when a girl's life is treated as a stain to be scrubbed away, rather than one worth remembering. If you'd like early access to more of these calm, unsettling journeys through forgotten history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, there's a link to the Patreon in the description. Feel free to like, subscribe, or leave a comment with other historical topics you'd like to see explored. If you're listening on a podcast app, a rating or review helps more people find their way to these stories. And special thanks to the supporters who make this show possible, including our chroniclers, Andrew S. and Rich Davis. Sleep well.